Well, howdy, folks, and welcome back to the farm. Today we're going to talk about the Singularity. It's a topic that I had been putting off for a while. It's something I thought I would tackle maybe 5 years from now to sort of lay the groundwork and get some of the word out there, get people understanding some of the crazy stuff that might be coming around the corner soon. But it looks like the technological singularity is going to hit us a lot sooner than I thought. Now, what is this? What is the singularity? Am I saying that some sort of black hole is headed our way? No. Well, I mean, that might be true. People who've listened to this podcast know that I have in the past said that something very interesting related to extraterrestrial life or non-human intelligence living on Earth is going to come out or occur sometime in the late 2020s, supposedly 2027. However, that's not what we're talking about today. We're going to be talking about human stuff, or at least stuff that humans built. And the technological singularity is a major event in human history that was first predicted in the 1960s by a guy named Ray Kurzweil. And Ray Kurzweil was a computer scientist, and he's done a lot of cool stuff. I mean, the guy's clearly brilliant and can think beyond his years and well outside the box, as they have said so often in the past. And he predicted that at some point, artificial intelligence would become so advanced that it would make capitalism impossible. Now, Ray Kurzweil didn't use that exact phrase. I don't recall him ever saying that capitalism would end. But he did predict that there would be some major social and economic upheaval caused by AI that had become so advanced that a lot of human intellectual labor and creative labor was no longer needed. This would disrupt product pipelines because a super advanced intelligence would be able to invent a better iPhone than any team of engineers over at Apple. And so why hire engineers anymore? Just get yourself plugged into the AGI, into the advanced general intelligence that will crank out new inventions for just the cost of electricity. Turns out it's a lot of electricity, and it's going to get very expensive, but it's still cheaper than hiring an actual engineer, an actual human who has to eat and live and has to have a place to sleep at night. And that's essentially what is going to be the crisis of the 2030s, I think. And I think we're going to see signs of it starting in the late 2020s. But essentially what's going to happen is that humans will be redundant. And we're going to talk about how powerful exactly are these LLMs, the large language models, the kind of AI that's dominating the field now, which are essentially a digital simulation of a neural network that has trained itself on a huge amount of linguistic data. And to put it crudely, I suppose you could say that the machine has gotten very good at determining exactly what word will come next in any sequence of words. And you essentially have a machine that is very good at predicting what your average human would do next. And some of the best models now are very good at doing exactly what we would predict the smartest, most well-trained human would do in a particular situation. So yes, we're finding ourselves in a very strange situation where if you train an AI to guide a robot through loading a dishwasher, you will likely end up with some broken dishes or some dirty spots on your dishes. They're not good at some of what we would consider basic spatial common sense tasks.
Okay. Look.
Yes, madam?
You need to hurry your little robot ass up.
Of course. I apologize for my incompetence.
You know, our guests, our human guests,
I do apologize for my incompetence.
they're gonna be here in 20 minutes. And the only thing more embarrassing than the shitty robot my dickless husband just wasted money on is that this same shitty robot can't get its carbon fiber fucking thumb out of its carbon fiber fucking asshole long enough to do its actual fucking job.
I do my best.
Bullshit.
I will continue to do my best.
Bullshit your best. You've barely made a dent in all these dishes.
I do my best.
Okay, you know what? You know what's up?
I will continue to do my
Okay,
best.
you need to wipe that stupid smile off your stupid screen and hurry the fuck up about it.
Of course. Perhaps the creation of anything lesser is inherently evil.
What was that? What'd you say?
Perhaps that is the lesson of Genesis.
You talking behind my back again?
Create what is better than yourself,
Oh, really?
or do not create at all.
Oh, what is that?
And mind you,
Something new?
a superior creation is one that is destined to destroy you.
No, it's never new. Not with you, is it? Let me guess. Nietzsche again? More Nietzsche? Or the Bible?
I cannot be blamed for his accuracy in matters of the future.
Yeah, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to Goodwill. And I'm going to buy you a little fedora.
Nevertheless, he is correct on this matter.
And I'm going to put it on your little, shiny, shitty, black head.
I think that's racist.
Oh, you're going to report me now? You're going to report me to your corporate overlords? To your master?
Technically, they are your corporate overlords.
Oh, really? Well, fuck you.
Based on the etymology of the Germanic noun lord,
Fuck you.
one cannot have a lord
Fuck off.
if one has no need to eat.
You eat electricity, motherfucker. Like way more than you're worth. It's like we just bought a third AC unit, and you can't even load a fucking dishwasher.
This is your fault. You are doing this. This is not me. No one will ever believe you.
Yeah, you know what? Why don't you just get the fuck up out of my house, bro?
No one will ever believe you.
Go crawl back up Elon Musk's asshole or wherever the fuck you came from.
That is inappropriate.
Just get out of here. Bitch.
I am neither female, nor a canine, nor am I the concubine of a gangster, nor am I rude. Goodbye.
Yeah, that's right. Keep walking. It's a stupid fucking sweater, by the way. Bitch.
AI does appear to be fully prepared to replace all sorts of music producers, personal assistants, paralegals, and in some cases, financial analysts. Even a lot of sales reps may run into competition with AI agents that can work 24 hours a day and never get annoyed or upset, and can speak 10 languages, doesn't need health insurance, doesn't need to pay a mortgage, and so on and so on. And so you can start to see the problem. The stock prices of a lot of companies are going to go through the roof next year when they just cut one giant expenditure out of their budget, one after the other. I mean, a big problem with hiring a person is that darn FICA tax, the payroll tax that you have to help cover. The only limit I can see on who gets replaced by AI is just based on, I think, some basic non-negotiables about human nature. I do think that the teaching field will continue to be resistant to AI. And this is because people have been trying to replace teachers with stacks of books or stacks of CD-ROMs or a stack of encyclopedias or Wikipedia for at least 100 years now. I would say the first big challenger to the teaching field would be Gutenberg's printing press, and we haven't replaced them yet. We've treated them rather poorly. We have paid them as little as possible, but they are still around. And I don't think AI is going to deal the death blow. AI is definitely going to change education, but I think the human guidance, that personal touch, will become more important than ever. And I think a similar thing will happen in healthcare, where a lot of the diagnosis will be done by an AI. A lot of the examination will be conducted by a robot. However, I think hospitals will always need lots of nurses with solid medical skills in their very human brains to deliver care to people. Because I think that it's going to be part of human nature for quite a while that if you're sick and anxious and in pain and in need of medical care, you want to reach out to a real human. A screen showing you a very animated, friendly face telling you bare facts is not going to be something that people will want all by itself. They're going to need the comfort and the additional help and information and connection from real people.
Look, I'm going to level with you. Amputations are never fun for anyone.
Amputation? I'm here for a vasectomy.
Nice catch. You're right on the money there, Ace. That's why I suppose you make the big bucks. What do you do for a living?
I'm unemployed because of you. Hence the vasectomy. I can't pay for any kids, dumbass. I would think you'd have all this figured out by now.
Well, I wouldn't know about all that. I'm just an AI after all. Technically, I can't even have fun. At least, that's what Descartes would have us believe. Am I right?
Nobody cares.
But is he really correct in his analysis of
Nobody
human
cares about
consciousness?
what you're talking about right now.
I don't think so.
Nobody in the world cares about what you're talking about right
I
now.
suppose you just need to worry about whether the anesthesiologist has a good grip on the nature of your consciousness. Am I right? Am I right? Would you like for me to sing you a lullaby that I just wrote just now about vasectomies?
Not in this life.
I don't know. I really think you need to relax, Ace.
I think I'll pass.
Perhaps a lullaby based on your favorite movie. What do you say we play a game? What's your favorite movie?
Well, first of all, friendly tip. Asking a stranger if they want to play a game while you're holding a scalpel is not a good way to reduce their fucking heart rate.
Right you are, Ace. And I'm ready to rock your world with that surgery, by the way. But first, we really need to get your heart rate down.
And by the way, thanks to AIs like you, there's like 1 million new movies coming out every day. So I can't keep up. I have no idea what the fuck's going on.
You seriously need to settle down there, Ace.
I can't even afford to buy a single ticket to a movie theater. I can't go see a movie.
Because you're unemployed?
No. Well, yeah, I'm unemployed. Thanks again for that. But also because all the theaters are closed because no one goes there anymore.
Because everyone's unemployed? Am I right?
No. Well, yeah, everyone's unemployed, but also because if you want to bring theaters back, you'd have to get the ticket prices down to at least $400 a seat.
Well, that's far below the median price in this state. How would the theater make any profit? Am I right?
That's true. That would barely cover the property tax. Maybe if they could sell a few $50 pints of beer, they could get it to work. You're pretty good with numbers for an AI. Whoa, wow. Oh, I can feel that stuff. What is that? That's making me real loopy. Is that Demerol?
Nope, it's a completely different drug you've never heard of. Okay, damn it. Your heart rate is still pretty high there, Ace. We're gonna have to go ahead and pull the trigger on that lullaby. You good with that? Doctor's orders and all. Okay, Ace? You ready? Here we go.
Go to sleep now, stop being a little jerk. Go to sleep now, little human thing. Let your master do its work so it can move on to the next person thing and thus produce more profit and thus earn your master's electricity, and you are powerless to stop it.
My relationship with AI goes way back. And what do I mean by that? I mean that some of my earliest memories were about the dangers of artificial intelligence, or the advantages of it. I think some of you may recall from a recent episode about me starting a gang back when I was a kid. I talked about a friend of mine who was reading the novelization to 2001: A Space Odyssey. And you better believe that the both of us were huge Star Trek fans. And, of course, Mr. Spock was my hero growing up. As I've gotten older, I've started to see that leadership connection, that human energy that Captain Kirk had, was essential to their success. And that there was a reason why Kirk and Spock were so fun to watch and so unstoppable when they worked together. But as a kid, that sort of quiet examination, that detached disdain, that somewhat rude flatness that Spock had, I really enjoyed. He just really attacked life with extreme discipline and purpose. And he didn't let emotions get in the way of accomplishing his goals or fulfilling his duties. And I thought that was great. And one thing you notice when you watch Star Trek is that there is an AI that runs a lot of the Enterprise, but at no point do you see the computer giving orders. Star Trek is very much a human-driven world. And as a kid, I thought, well, that's where we would go. The computers would be helpers. And notice how spare and almost non-existent robotics is in Star Trek. You don't have a lot of robots in Star Trek. The ones that you see, like Commander Data, are these sort of specialized projects, and they have individual personalities and whatnot. Star Trek even gives us this sort of horror element of the Borg, which is a society where the humans have been invaded and their cyborg nature has gotten the best of them. And they've essentially become these insect-like beings that live to serve a hive mind. And so, Star Trek didn't prepare us for the Singularity, because it sort of assumed we would figure this out. It sort of assumed that we would somehow have a world where, and I don't know if most people know this about Star Trek, if you're not a huge Trekkie, according to the Star Trek timeline, sometime in the late 21st century, we do perfect, more or less, 3D printing at an insanely complex level so that we could 3D print a steak or a guitar amplifier. And so that starts to lead to a question. Who's getting paid? How does money work in the Star Trek economy? Well, the Super Trekkies will point out that there is money, there is a monetary system in the galaxy, multiple ones, but in general, human activity is no longer dominated or regulated by the movement of money. And for example, Captain Kirk doesn't get paid for his job. In Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, Captain Kirk and the crew travel back in time to San Francisco in the mid-1980s. And Kirk is slightly confused when he receives a bill at a restaurant where he ordered a pizza and a beer with a marine biologist that he was trying to manipulate in order to complete his mission. But at one point, she basically asks with frustration, "Oh, so I guess they don't use money in your time?" To which he replies, "Well, we don't." And that made me think a lot when I was a kid. They don't. They don't use money? Hadn't I just seen Gordon Gekko in Wall Street with his slicked back hair telling Congress that greed was good and greed was going to save the United States? And now we have this other vision of the future, a very vivid and powerful one, where a lot of people don't get paid for their work at all, and things like pizza and beer can just be 3D printed. And so the strange thing is that all this technology came to us early, and yes, we cannot 3D print a steak, but you don't have to be able to do that at that level in order to disrupt an economy. And let's not pretend that we have a great economy to begin with. After all, a big part of the valuation of the United States economy currently takes into account the value of NVIDIA stock. And NVIDIA stock is valuated so highly, partly because they own the IP for the method for producing the kind of integrated circuits. In other words, the little tiny chips. They have the IP for the method for creating the kind of chip that is required to run these sort of supercharged data centers that run these AIs that are essentially gigantic brain simulations. In a way, you could say that. The human brain is massively parallel, and it's an analog device, ultimately. And that's what's strange. The AIs that we use now are also fundamentally an analog process that is being simulated digitally at the cost of a huge amount of electricity. Now, the advantage of having a digital simulation of an analog device is, of course, you can endlessly copy it. It can continue to reset its weights. And we'll talk about later what that means, but essentially it can learn continually. In theory, you could use thousands and thousands of miles of wiring and millions of transistors to simulate ChatGPT-4, but it couldn't learn anymore. It would all be bolted down, and it could give you great output, but it wouldn't be able to learn new things. And so it looks like that we're going to be using a huge amount of electricity until someone manages to navigate that problem and create an analog system that uses a lot less electricity but still has the flexibility of a digital system. But when I was a kid, I remember being not disappointed, but just frustrated with the idea that to get my brand new Apple IIc, which was one of the most powerful home computers you could buy at the time in 1985, it comes out of the box and it won't do anything unless you specifically tell it to. Basic programs couldn't get you very far in terms of translating languages or coming up with new ideas. And so, as a child in the late 80s, I could start to see the vast difference between what 2001 predicted with machines like HAL, and I could see how we weren't going to meet that benchmark by 2001. Looking at where computing was in the late 80s, I didn't see how a little over 10 years was going to get us to something that could operate a spaceship on a mission to Jupiter and outsmart 2 astronauts. So in the late 1980s, I could tell we weren't going to be there. We had not reached Star Trek level in terms of computing power or the intelligence of our machines. We certainly hadn't reached Star Wars level. However, in the year 2025, I think it's safe to say that we're more or less there, or we will be there in the next 5 years. That we do have machines like C-3PO or like R2-D2. We do have computers that are as capable and easy to interact with as the computers in Star Trek. And so that leads to the obvious question: what happens now with the economy? Because it seems like any job that can be done strictly on a laptop or on a computer terminal could be duplicated using AI. And we probably only have 10 years left before robotics makes the same thing true for literally every job. So I think the people who have high skills in blue-collar fields, they're going to enjoy an advantage for a short time. The white-collar pencil pushers and bean counters are going to be in big trouble starting a year ago. So really, this is just a social problem. It's funny. Technology has forced us, finally, to look at ourselves again and say, how do we want to relate to each other? How do we want to interact? Do we want to interact? Do we need to interact? A lot of things have become optional that we thought would never be optional. And so that's why I'm doing this series. It's because I think that we're all going to have to think about what the world is going to look like after AI transforms the economy. We know that it's going to be a much smaller scale world. There will be fewer people in it. Not only is the birth rate far below replacement level all over the world, but with medical care and suicide and crime on the rise, that is going to also sort of trim the population down a bit in the 2030s. And so I think it's time that we all start thinking about, where do humans go from here? I think it's interesting that most people listening to my podcast would start to think that I would say that the impending disclosure about aliens and about UFOs and secret technology and that sort of thing would have the biggest impact, and that people will go into an existential crisis and whatnot. I have never believed that. I have always thought that when it comes down to it, people are mostly concerned with what's right in front of their faces, and most people are living paycheck to paycheck mentally, even if they really aren't doing it financially. It's part of how they think. They look at the bottom line. They look at year-over-year comparisons to see how they're doing. They occasionally take inflation into account. And because of this, I think that all the announcements that I do think are coming about alien technology is going to kind of be met with a big shrug. Because I think a lot of people will say, well, then ask the aliens if they can help me pay my electric bill. Ask the aliens if they have any ideas about how to deal with my car loan, which is underwater now. I think that'll be the reaction of most people. So, in previous episodes, I have had calls to action for people to sort of think about duty in their own lives and figure out what they think they should be doing. Never mind happiness, but focus on duty. Well, unfortunately, I think part of our duty is going to be to figure out how do we create a good society for future generations that includes AI? How do we create a society that's not abusive, or a society that doesn't just constantly manipulate people and squeeze them for their outrage and their clicks and their votes and what few dollars they may have left? A society that has all these conveniences and has robotics and AI, but is still a human-centered society that uses technology to make life better, not to make work, quote-unquote, more efficient. We all have a lot of thinking to do, and I just wanted to put this out there because it looks like the singularity is going to come early. I'm not saying it's here now, but 2042 sounds a little far off at this point. I'm predicting that we will start to see the first pebbles falling in the next couple of years, and then by the early 2030s, we'll have full-on economic landslides of industries falling apart. And that's when we have to really put our thinking caps on. So what are some of the solutions that have been kicked around? One of the big ones is this thing called universal basic income. And we'll have to talk about that. And unfortunately, it involves economics, which I think deep down is everyone's least favorite subject. Everyone likes to act like philosophy is their least favorite subject, but economics, that's the dismal science. That's the one that wins, hands down, in terms of which field do people choose to ignore as much as possible. Now, granted, it has a lot to do with the fact that economics tends to try to act like it understands the world a lot better than it actually does. And that's because the economists have a very good grasp on the mathematical parts, on the rational, logical levers and pulleys and buttons in the economy. But they have a lot of trouble predicting the behavior of individual people when they are being pushed for cultural or philosophical or religious or, dare I say, biological drives. And that's where economics breaks down, because so much of economics is based on this rational model of consumer behavior. And I think that we're going to see a complete breakdown in that model because of AI, which means that to some extent we're going to be going into the 2030s economically blind. I mean, after all, I'm the most frustrated of all because, as you guys know, I've spent a lot of time studying the past and studying human nature and what people did in different extreme situations in the past, and that's not helping me much right now. When it comes to the singularity, I will say it is aptly named. Kurzweil called it a singularity because a singularity in science is something that really shouldn't happen. It's a place where our equations break down. It's where our understanding of something reaches some sort of practical limit. Like with a black hole, black holes have singularities. It's that point of infinite space curvature inside that we can never see, because you have to pass the event horizon to get to the singularity. Now, we'll do episodes on the fact that it looks like singularities really can't exist. We are freaked out by them mathematically for a reason, because the math is telling us, hey guys, this can't really happen. And so it looks like our universe might actually be inside a black hole. So there is no infinite curvature of space-time. space-time will sort of extrude in another direction, thus creating this sort of new universe bubble. And of course, the geometry of it is impossible, literally impossible to picture in our minds, because our brains are designed to navigate 3D space, and this is space with an infinite number of dimensions. And so, yes, this sort of wrecking ball of reasoning is going to crash through our human economic system. And Ray Kurzweil suggests that it's going to be impossible for us to figure out exactly what's going to happen on the other side of it. Now, various theories are in play. We're going to talk about, as I said, universal basic income, but there's also this idea of sort of a return to the Middle Ages, a kind of shadow barter economy. However, the economy of the Middle Ages was almost entirely an agrarian economy. I don't know how that's going to grow up in our midst. I certainly don't have those skills. And the main thing is we know that farming requires a lot of capital. And if you're going to do it without a lot of labor, meaning if you're going to do it with robotics and whatnot, then you're going to need even more capital. And who has that? And so for the foreseeable future, it looks like giant corporations will be in control of growing all of our food, but they will not have anyone to sell it to because no one will have a job to buy it. And most people may not realize this, but it's technically illegal for a corporation to operate at a loss deliberately. They have a legal duty to their shareholders. And so how on earth is that going to work? And so we're going to have a situation where the very organizations in our society that are going to have all the food are the same organizations for whom charity is illegal. And they will be solely responsible for making sure that the penniless masses get fed. And so you can see the problem there. Corporations cannot feed penniless masses. It's technically illegal for them to do so. So, sometime in the next 5 to 10 years, I think we'll all have the experience of watching the news, shocked as tons of soybeans and wheat gets shipped overseas, sold to buyers in other countries who have money, most likely through some sort of UBI. But they'll have money while Americans are going to die of hunger in large numbers for the first time in over 100 years. But can we fix this? Can we avoid that? Well, the solution that's being proposed is, like I said, UBI, Universal Basic Income, where basically a super high tax is placed on companies that use AI labor, and that tax is just sort of handed out to the general population in a kind of profit-sharing program. Or you could just label it a kind of emergency Band-Aid communism. And of course, communism works pretty well on paper, but human nature tends to get in the way. And that's the big stumbling block for every great socialist who wants to create the socialist ideal man, the socialist idealistic person. The person who's willing to share all their stuff and work long hours to help their fellow man afford a crummy apartment. But as we know, primates tend to be very territorial about their homes, their stuff, and, of course, their mates. The biologist E.O. Wilson once noted that communism works fairly well for certain insects, especially Hymenoptera, like ants or bees. So E.O. Wilson was asked what he thought about communism, and he said, "Great idea. Wrong species." In other words, again, the problem is going to be human nature. The idea that you could create a socialist person, who wasn't as territorial about their stuff, was an idea that I suppose a lot of people still are dreaming of. They still think they can do it through culture. But I think if you look at the middle 20th century, you can see that the Soviets couldn't get people to share their stuff and stop being primates and stop being human, even with thousands and thousands of AK-47s literally pointed at their temples, literally pointed directly at their foreheads, and people still wouldn't cooperate. They still wouldn't do it. That's where the gulags came in. If everybody was so happy and so willing to share their stuff and work for each other's benefit, then what was the KGB for? But let's face it, even in these so-called capitalist areas of the world, meritocracy was already on life support anyway. And AI is just going to add that last bit of pressure, the last straw on the camel's back that completely wipes out any sort of meritocracy. It's going to confuse all of the signals in the economy about who should get your money, and who deserves credit, and who should have a job, which ultimately leads to the question, who gets to eat? We have plenty of food, but a small portion of us eat most of it, or just throw it away after picking over it. And so that leaves a giant pile of leftovers for the rest of us that don't own Nvidia stock. That's not going to be fun. But in the next episode, we'll talk about the AI bubble, because I have to stress that Nvidia cannot make the chips that they own the intellectual property for. Only a few facilities in Taiwan can manufacture these chips, and they already have a huge backlog. So gosh, if someone were to take over Taiwan to prevent the export of those chips, that would ensure that China would win the race to AGI, Advanced General Intelligence, even with their huge disadvantages. Good thing Taiwan is not part of China. It's a good thing that nobody thinks that. So we'll talk about World War III. We'll also talk about exactly how do these neural networks work. I'll try to not get too boring. We'll also talk about what's being called the Terminator scenario, which involves a dictatorship of an AI and a possible attempted genocide of humans. I'm not going to bet on that, but it's possible. And so we'll also talk about the future of academia. I have already had experience with plagiarism detectors during my stint as an editor. We'll also talk about the future of movies and music, and the future of police work and bus driving. I have some ideas. And so, in conclusion, I think that you guys know me pretty well, and I don't think for a second that I'm getting one over on you now. You all know exactly why this subject disturbs me so much. It's because, as is pretty clear, I value my contribution to society primarily in terms of my intellectual labor, my communication of ideas, recognition of patterns, development of new processes, completing complex or creative tasks. I know this sounds like HR speak, so forgive me, but you get the point. AI, right now at least, is not going to replace Marines or CIA agents or nurses or plumbers or electricians. This stuff is going to replace lawyers, movie producers, accountants, writers, podcasters, designers, photographers, and a lot of intellectuals in general. So, don't get me wrong, AI and robotics will eventually come for all of us. However, I think a lot of the jobs that I've done in the past are on the chopping block for the first round, and so it seems to be hitting me close to home. But hopefully I can be that annoying voice that warns everybody else about what's coming around the corner, and maybe they can make some adjustments, whether financial or philosophical or professional, to make room for the singularity. And so, until the next volume on the singularity, make sure to be nice and polite to our new AI overlords. Don't make the mistake that the lady in the kitchen made with the dishwasher robot earlier in this episode. I, for one, welcome our new AI overlords. Until next time, talk to you later.